Hi, this is Nicole Gabai with Area Code 508. I recently had the amazing opportunity to sit down with Richard Dreyfuss and have a conversation. He is the legendary film and stage actor, and many of you may remember him from such movies as Mr. Holland's Opus, from Jaws, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Whose Life Is It Anyway, What About Bob? I could go on and on. He's an Academy Award winner and has won many other awards, including Golden Globes. This past summer, he shot the film Lightkeepers on Cape Cod, also starring Blythe Danner. And I had an opportunity to sit down with him and talk about a subject that he is so passionate about and that is near and dear to his heart. And that's the Dreyfuss Initiative, which are his ideas about bringing civics back to the classroom and introducing these themes once again to kids in America. So what follows is my conversation with Richard. Being that civics is so in-depth and there is so much involved as far as bringing that back into either the curriculum, how do you propose, what is your idea in terms of this?
We had our first conference about the subject.
Okay.
And the question was asked, what is it? What is civics?
Yep.
And is it necessary? And if it's necessary, is it urgent? And if it's urgent, what are we doing about it? And the answer is, yes, it's urgent.
Yes.
And yes, we have completely and utterly failed in the fundamental tenet of the United States of America, which is that the future is more important than the past. That's what separated us from any other nation in the world. We are a nation bound only by ideas. We have no common ancestry or religion or caste system or class system. If we don't teach those ideas, they don't exist.
That's, I was going to ask you about those ideas. Now, when you said we're bound by ideas, do you mean by the original thought of ideas and the ability to express them, or do you mean certain American ideals?
I mean, what is known as the Enlightenment was actualized in the Constitution and the Declaration, and the Enlightenment is reason and logic, clarity of thought.
Yeah.
Critical analysis.
Yes.
And we teach none of that to our kids.
And how do you think we can bring that to the curriculum? How do we teach kids to think critically and be able to have civil discourse about that?
Well, first you can layer it in trans-departmentally. It's
so it's throughout a curriculum, not just a class.
Any subject.
Right.
And when a history teacher is teaching history, to know the difference between what's history and what is current affairs, and what is contextual. That you can't talk about, let's say, healthcare or impeachment or war powers or going to war as if it was born fully grown at that moment and it's only about that moment.
Right.
It has a history.
Right.
And that is not taught anymore. You have to learn the concept of context. And the other things, reason and logic, have been taught actually for 3,500 years.
Yeah.
And there are ways known and established to teach that, and to teach not only what dissent is, but to raise it up as something to be devoted to.
Right.
Because we are a nation founded by dissenters.
That's right.
And yet, in our culture, we fire dissenters the moment we see them.
Yes. Isn't that interesting how that happens?
Yeah. If a thing is not, represented, it doesn't exist. It's like the tree that falls in the forest.
Right. Does anyone hear it?
Nobody hears it.
Right.
So reason itself, unless it's exemplified somewhere, in history classes, in science classes, and whatever, does not exist. And the most vivid example of this is civility.
Yes.
Civility is not just antique politeness.
Right.
It's the oxygen that's required by any democracy.
Yes.
And when the norm becomes incivility, becomes screaming and yelling and patronizing and yelling.
Which we have seen a lot of on television and
which we
in
have
debates.
seen only. Then kids grow up thinking that's the only option.
Right.
When in fact, that's not only wrong, it's wrong at the top of its lungs.
Now, how do you think we would be able to introduce the whole idea of having critical discourse where one person doesn't end up taking it personally, and then everything changes. That's what it seems that happens.
Well, when we were on Martha's Vineyard having this conference,
Yeah.
one of the historians was Gordon Wood from Brown University, and he said, I have no stake in a historic issue like slavery. He said, slavery was done and decided on 50 years before I was born. It's the contemporary issues that people have a stake in.
Right.
People may fear, let's say a Democrat may fear that if they go and send their kids to civics classes, they're going to come back Republicans.
That's right.
Or Republicans may fear that
very
they'll
good
come
point.
back Democrats.
That's right.
But in fact,
Yeah.
in order to have a civic society, you've got to teach first the neutral, pre-partisan tools
Yes.
that all citizens must share. And that is something that comes before. If you want to build a Chevy or a Porsche, first you got to build an internal combustion engine. Then you can make a decision about what kind of car. And try to build a Chevy before you build the internal combustion engine and see how far it's going to get you.
Yeah. So how do we tie this into a modern curriculum where, I don't know, it seems that kids today do only see the here and now in this country? I wonder, is this a cultural problem? Or if I go to Europe or if I go to South America and I have friends over, we all start talking about a political subject and everyone has different opinions, but everyone can still talk about it. That doesn't seem to happen here. Is that because people aren't paying attention? Or do you think it's that it's just not important enough?
I think that when you hear people saying in any way, express a kind of distrust, term limits says that no matter what your life experience is, if you're in Congress for more than 2 terms, you're a crook, get out. And if you're a judge and you're proscribed from sentencing, and that's saying to the judge, we don't trust you. Trust is at the basis of the democracy that we have chosen and built, which is called a republic, a representative democracy. And that is built on trust of our representation.
And that seems to waver.
Well, I think that right now there's a 100% agreement that public officials speak inauthentically about public issues. Now people are willing to go on the Jerry Springer show and say that they have incest with their sisters in public, so that our private life is public and our public life is private, because officials don't talk about it honestly. So everything is standing on its head, and it's not civics that is the cure, but civics is certainly, or education is certainly part of the cure. And when you see young people cynical, cynicism is probably the ugliest characteristic of man. It's like a mule. It has no offspring.
It doesn't go forward.
And cynicism is only born in one place, and that's the end of a love affair. And when you break your heart, or when someone breaks your heart, that's when you become cynical. And that's what happened in the United States. We entered...
When did the love affair end?
In the 60s.